thank you for being here with us, as well as those who are watching on the live stream. I'd like to encourage you to open to page 60 in the thin volumes you received when coming in this afternoon. It devolves upon the Jewish community to, in the weeks between Pesach and Shavuot, to each night pause and to count the Omer in accordance with an ancient tradition. That ancient practice has been invested with much contemporary relevance. For the Jewish people all around the world, use these short few minutes to reflect upon their attributes, the course of their lives, and their personal growth. Please rise as we recite the blessing for the Omer. Hineni muchan u'mezuman l'kayem mitzvat aseh shel sfirat ha'omer. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al svirat ha'omer. Today, Thursday the 13th, Hayom Shmona Yamim Shehem Shavua Echad V'Yom Echad LaOmer. Today is the 8th day, that is 1 week and 1 day of the Omer. Please be seated. Here in the synagogue, which this family has called its spiritual home for half a century, we gather with our friends and raise our voices together to the source of life, asking for nechuma, for comfort, and for chizuk, for strength and uplift. For we need light when gloom darkens our lives. To whom shall we look if not to the Creator of light? We need strength and courage when pain and loss assail us. Where shall we find them, if not in the thought of the one who preserves all that is good from destruction? We are blessed if we have not yet passed through trials and bereavements. But some present here bear fresh wounds in their hearts, and therefore feel more keenly the kinship of sorrow. Others, whose days of mourning are more remote, still recall the comfort that sympathy brought to their sorrowing hearts. Our rational minds know that all things pass. Emotionally, though, it is so hard to accept that all that lives must die. All that we prize is but lent to us, and the time comes when we must surrender it, for we are all travelers on the same road that leads us to the same end. On page 63, birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey from birth to death to life everlasting. Tonight, we salute one who has made a very successful journey over the course of a long life, and we're thankful. Esainai el harim, me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai, Ose shamayim va'aretz, Al yitain lamot raglecha, Al yanum shomrecha, Hine lo yanum velo yishan, Shomer Yisroel. Adonai shomerecha, Adonai tzilecha, Al yad yaminecha, Yomam HaShemesh lo yakeka, V'yareach balayla, Adonai yishmorecha mikol ra, Nishmor et nafshecha, Adonai yishmor tzeitecha uvoecha, me'ata v'ad olam. Everyone in this room was associated with Joe in a somewhat different way. Some knew him as a husband, as a father or grandfather, a friend or colleague or mentor. To each of us, Joe's name is somewhat different. As it says, each person has a name on page 67. We each have a name given by God and given by our father and mother. We each have a name given by our stature and smile and given by our attire. We each have a name given by the hills and given by the walls. We each have a name given by the stars and given by our friends. We each have a name given by our sins and given by our yearnings. We each have a name given by our enemies and given by love. We each have a name given by celebrations and given by our work. We each have a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. We each have a name given by the sea and given by our death. Earlier this afternoon, I intimated that in all of the years of my rabbinate, I had never heard, one after the other, such intimate, respectful, remarkable hespedim, funeral eulogies, than were delivered by your family today. And they all came together to crown your loved one with a keter shem tov, with the crown of a good name, arguably the highest accolade awarded to a Jewish person in the course of his or her lifetime. I would like to hear more, and I'd like to ask if Noah, please, and Sandy would come forward here and address our group, our Minyan. I'd like to ask you if you can pin this on, or if you prefer to hold it so it can be heard. What's your pleasure? Maybe one could hold it for the other.
How does that sound? Good. Thank you, everyone. A few years ago, at Dad's 90th birthday, we all acknowledged just how fortunate we have been to have him with us and to guide us and our kids with so much love, care and interest, a devoted parent and grandparent. I love to chat with Dad about all sorts of topics, including art and architecture. the latest history podcast, American politics, plants, migraine treatments, what's new, what's coming, and just the details of what's going on with our family. The youngest of four, I would relish the time I would spend just with Dad when I was quite young. We had a busy household. Dad and I would spend time together on ambitious school projects. In response to simple briefs provided by primary school teachers, we would work up complex 2- and 3-dimensional solutions. I have strong memories of producing a convincing bird's nest under Dad's careful direction, using plaster cast materials supplied from one of the hospitals he worked at, twigs from the garden, and coffee from the kitchen. This work could not be completed until it was perfect, and it was not perfect until about 11 p.m. on a Sunday night. That was for a very important deadline on Monday. I was 5. Through those years, I would be Dad's assistant on a Saturday morning ward round, and this was a really special thing to go on. I just loved chatting with the Sisters of Mercy and to have a chance to have a special lemonade drink with Dad in the surgeon's lounge from the special bar fridge at Prince Henry's Hospital. Special times, I really did relish those. And at that young age, I already came to experience and after a time just expect this special respect that was given to Dad firsthand from patients and from hospital staff. And also in this place, actually, as we would not attend terribly often, but when we did, there would invariably be people who would come up to Mum and Dad and say, I'd say, hello, Mr. Freidin, you know, thank you, you did this or that or whatever to my grandmother. And often Dad would just, you know, nod and say thank you, and then he would ask Mum, who was that? They were really lovely acknowledgements. Dating back to the 70s, Dad was a willing partner in Mum's more adventurous travel itineraries. For example, Mum tacked on a little side trip to Tehran on the way to a family trip in Israel, just so that we could explore the Shuk, check out the Persian carpets and look at the Shah's Museum of Crown Jewels. It was a logical stop for family holiday, and that occurred just prior to the Shah being overthrown and the American kidnapping situation. A decade later, Dad, Mum and our beloved Auntie Lucia undertook a trip to Kiev with a suitcase full of Levi's jeans. That was a form of currency in those years, and it was taken to be gifted to Mum's relatives battling life in the Soviet regime. So I think they were quite game travellers when I reflect back on these times. And during that trip, they befriended some very anxious Americans who were nervous. They had a mission to complete, which was to contact a number of refuseniks and give them yet more Levi's jeans, the currency of the day. So Dad was obliging and helpful and offered to assist them by making these somewhat dangerous calls from a phone booth, speaking Russian, in Moscow. So as I pointed out, they were keen travellers, and perhaps about 20 years ago, Mum and Dad took the opportunity to take a short onshore excursion from a cruise that visited Dad's city of birth, Gdansk. This proved very challenging. On their return, when I was asking Dad about the trip, he was surprised that he felt overwhelmed when he started to share the story with me. He had asked the Gdansk guide whether he could be directed towards the Jewish cemetery, as his father had died there and would be buried there, and he hoped he might be able to visit that cemetery and see his grave. The guide casually responded, "Oh no, so that wouldn't be possible. The Jewish cemetery was destroyed by the Germans during the war." So this was very upsetting for Dad. And while he was committed to documenting his history, and as we've spoken about many times today, he did that, he was never bound or governed by that sadness, experience of racism or warmongering that had been the determinants in his early life. On the contrary, he was optimistic and positive about the wonderful life the family had been able to build in Australia. As a caring and sensitive doctor, what was most notable for me was the gentle way in which he didn't let something go. In architecture, we call that holding the line. And I think he did that too in a particular way with medicine. If he saw a misdiagnosis on his watch, he wanted to gently intervene, always politely and respectfully, but taking action so that the right outcome would unfold. So this approach was intrinsic to his being, as not just a doctor, but a man deeply invested in the health, well-being and longevity of his family, friends and patients. Usually people were grateful recipients of his sage advice, and individual consultations and particularly his home visits were an incredible, unique and were deeply appreciated. As a child, I also recall visitors in the evening, doctors who would come over to have a chat with Dad about a difficult case, perplexed and perhaps needing another deep think at a workshop what the correct diagnosis might be or what course of action was needed. In later years, Dad had the greatest respect for the doctors that looked after him, and we are so grateful for their commitment. So Jeff Lefkowitz, Yael Kippen and Susan Cohen, I just particularly want to note their dedication and the way they have treated him as if he were a 50-year-old looking forward to many, many decades to come, and it's just been a really wonderful thing. When I joined him at a medical appointment in 2020, he was so impressed with the way the doctor took the history. And he said to me afterwards, "I'm so glad that you came." I said, "Well, Dad, I promised to drive you. It's not that big a deal." And he said, "No, I'm so glad you came because you could see how an excellent physician works, how carefully the history was taken. You know, it's like detective work. The human body is very complex." Dad's greatest love and commitment was, of course, to Mum. He marvelled at Mum's abilities in so many things. He was particularly impressed with Mum's tech skills. I popped over one morning in response to a panic message that all the emails have gone. As I arrived, there didn't seem to be much panic. I was surprised. And Dad said, "Mum's incredible. All the emails disappeared on my iPad and now they're back." We will never know how. He greatly admired Mum's financial management, travel planning and frequent production of our favourite seasonal cakes. Fruit cakes in December, hazelnut torte, Passover and chocolate cakes for birthdays. Dad was so dedicated to sharing experiences with Mum. I have the water, sorry. Stay there, bring the water to me. Dad was so dedicated to sharing experiences with Mum that when I arranged a special gallery visit to see the David Hockney show, just a father and daughter thing, he joined me after spending about 20 minutes apart from me looking at the portrait exhibition room and remarked, "Oh, this show is incredible. Mum would love this. I'll have to come back with her." While so sad right now, we can only celebrate Dad's love, generosity and wonderful wisdom, always taking time to look, listen and learn. If you are prescribed a course of antibiotics, please take the full course, even if you are starting to feel better. And would you please, please listen to your mother.
Hello. Yes. Great. Cool. Okay, before I read the thing that I wrote, I want to say 3 things that I'm going to remember and then read something that Gabby has sent me to read. That's the agenda. Right. 1, it was nice to just walk in here and just recall how many times we've all been in this space for so many joyous occasions with Grandma and Grandpa and all of our family and community, and to be here together with you all now is really special. I did a school project where I had to talk about choose something to say was like my artifact from my family, and I chose my bat mitzvah shoes, which I did a little, here they are, which I'm not wearing them now, but I am wearing this skirt that Grandpa's mum, Paula, made. The grandma gave me a little while ago, and this necklace, which Uncle Luca gave to me when I was born. And I was going to show Grandpa this bag that I bought in Beechworth on Tuesday, so now you all get it. I think it's great. Okay, this is what Gabby sent me to read. Is that? Yep, that's enough. Okay, good. Okay, this is from Brother Gap, who was in Oxford. Joe was an esteemed surgeon, artist, gardener, writer, adventurer, and many more besides. But to me, he was Grandpa. Almost always softly spoken, his gentle demeanour hid a force of personality and wisdom, developed over a life so full of experiences that there was something ethereal in his presence in my life. We made strudel, we watched the late night news, discussed politics and science. He patiently gave Noah and I lessons in drawing and painting, but most importantly, he taught us to have wonder and appreciation for the stunning beauty that exists all around us. I would arrive at Grandma and Grandpa's, often unannounced, and he would be in the garden or on the couch. "Come and sit," he would announce. He would ask, is that right? Yes. He would ask and listen as I told him about my week, usually with questions and occasionally some need for diagrams. But my favourite was when it was my turn to listen, as a surgical procedure was described, with modern advancements delightedly noted, such as the revolutions of keyhole surgery or antibiotics, which we've mentioned today a number of times. An anatomy lesson would suddenly become tangible, like his demonstration of veins and arteries. "Easier to show you on my wrinkled arm than yours," he would say. His artwork weaves and threads through my existence. Paintings and sketches of buildings, flowers, Lego cars and spaceships, Baba, robots and sisters. Well, just the award-winning one. The painting was award-winning. I have no doubt we grandkids received the best postcards and birthday cards to be found this side of the Milky Way. Every place I have lived or will live. At home at Mount Martha, my apartment in Balaclava, and now in Oxford, his artwork is there, reminders of what stunning things practice and persistence can produce, and messages of joy and love and compassion. Okay, so this is a slightly altered version of what I read at the funeral this afternoon. Just has a few more like side stories. It's not too much longer. Joseph Freidin. Joe, deaf, Dad, my grandpa. My pride and inspiration, gentle guide and warm embrace, and who I hope to be like when I grow up and always. I was named Noah after Noah Rabin. Mum and Dad watched her televised eulogy for her grandpa, Yitzhak Rabin, the Israeli Prime Minister known for being the closest to creating peace for Israel and her neighbours, who was lost in a moment of violence and hate. Growing up, I thought a lot about my name and the names of our family. I was proud to be named after a granddaughter in awe of her grandfather's grace, comfort, fierce passion, and patience for justice and health and kindness. I resonated so deeply with this idea. I am grateful that we instead lost our grandpa in a moment of peace and love. Today, here on beautiful Bunurong country, on whose lands my grandpa lived, learned, and nurtured the Freidin family, I wanted to share some stories today from my life with my grandpa, but also from his life before my time. When we met with Rabbi Roebuck, me and Grandma and Julian and Andrew on Monday night, I learnt so many stories I hadn't heard before. And what overwhelmed me the most in that moment was that I will never know all his stories. But what comforted me was remembering that each story of Grandma and Grandpa, each memory of laughter, love, learning, formed a rich and warm story holistically that made for a full and well-lived life. This part is a little history, which I considered editing down, but those who enjoyed Grandpa's stories know you have to go back and get the context, so that is what we're going to do. Welcome. Grandpa was born in Danzig, now Gdansk, Poland, on August 6, 1926. Incidentally, he and Mum share in having birthdays on the anniversaries of the bombings of Hiroshima and Pearl Harbor, something we discussed fairly regularly. He and his older brother, Luca, Elias, Bob, were 5 years different in age. Descendant from Russian family, their father Abraham sold timber packing cases to orange growers, traveling likely to Tel Aviv for this work. He died when Grandpa was 6. Their mother Paula studied chemistry and crystallography during World War I in Saratov, however was unable to complete her studies due to German defeat of the Russian Empire in 1917. To me, she embodies all Jewish culture, as Grandpa describes her in his book as combining an unusual mixture of a state of anxiety when all seemed to be going well, with a rock-like, phlegmatic calm under conditions of adversity. She became self-taught in dress work, which she continued professionally to support the family. They lived in Danzig, speaking German and possibly Yiddish until 1932, when Grandpa was 6 and the family moved to Brussels. Grandpa went to school, spoke French, and as Grandma told us, likely developed his reasoning skills and multifaceted approach for problem solving through the Brussels multi-curricular school system, which later translated to his love of history, particularly of ancient Rome, as well as 20th century Russian history, international politics, deep knowledge of botany and plants, and watercolors, all topics I adored to hear him speak about, explain, and teach me. In 1938, Grandpa and Luca's uncle Sioma felt that Brussels was no longer sufficiently safe for Jews, and specifically for his family. He organised a car and Nansen visa from Australia, and in 1940 they underwent an arduous, complicated 6-month journey with 2 other families from Brussels, through all of France to the port of Lisbon, where they were detained during Grandpa's 14th birthday. The details of their migration story are in Grandpa's meticulously written memoir, A Tale of Two Continents, which he published the year I was born. This book of our family history is a testament to his skilled and thorough storytelling. I love reading it because it carries so clearly my grandpa's voice. His methodical, deeply researched and invested way of sharing, but also the way he uses his vast knowledge as a general surgeon to retroactively diagnose his family members. Not just those he knew, but uncles before he was born, his grandfather Emmanuel, and so on. It could only be written by my grandpa, and it is with joy, honor, and deep appreciation that I may carry his legacy by continuing to share his story in his words and in mine. Grandpa began to learn English from his brother Luca on a refitted cattle boat they travelled on called the SS Dora, while detained in the port of Lisbon for about 6 weeks, during which time he turned 14. The 6-month journey continued around Africa, through South Africa, via Fremantle to Melbourne, where they arrived on November 13, 1940. Grandpa was quickly placed in school in the year above his age group, having arrived with 6 languages, the newest, of course, being English. Grandpa duxed his school 3 years later. Possibly the state, I heard say, which I didn't know. His year 11 teacher suggested that he do medicine, which was something he hadn't considered before. And here is a sign of the times in, I think, 1944. His marks were so good that he didn't even need to do year 12 to get into medicine at Melbourne Uni. UCAT, Jamstat, ATAR, who's she? He studied at Melbourne Uni, walking every day from Flinders Street to the medicine building, rather than taking the tram to save about 6 pence a day. What I admire and aspire to learn from his career is his patience with every individual patient, deep care for their story, valuing proper attention over time efficiency. He knew them by name, and often after personal assessment would provide a different and actually correct diagnosis as opposed to what had been sent to him on paper, because he spent his time and he spent care. My grandma Sonia met Grandpa in Barclay Street at the Joff's Christmas party. I love hearing stories about their early courtship. Grandma was a young, fiery Sydney-sider. She is my inspiration as a feminist trailblazer, musician, loving mother and grandmother, seriously good storyteller, and incomparable cake maker. Grandma and Grandpa complement each other in Grandma's sociality and Grandpa's quiet listening way. Grandma's ambidextrous writing and Grandpa's calligraphic writing. Grandma's love and warmth and Grandpa's love and warmth. And their love for plants, paintings, learning, listening, their family and each other. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall at their dinner parties with Bev and Reg and all of their other wonderful friends, who I grew up knowing and loving too. When Grandma was 25 and Grandpa was 35, they had 3 children under the age of 5, 2 careers in the medical and healthcare world, and a home in Keong Road. My mum, Sandy, was the baby of the family with 3 big brothers, Philip, Julian, and Andrew. Grandpa's career was not just successful, but legendary. He was a general surgeon at Prince Henry's Hospital, where the Melbourneian stands today on St Kilda Road. A beloved lecturer and teacher, referred to by many and known for speaking to his older Jewish patients in Yiddish. He retired at 65 when keyhole surgery took over the profession, deciding instead of learning a whole new method of surgery, to go and learn a whole new world of history, gardening, painting, politics, and grandchildren instead. Growing up, I went to Grandma and Grandpa's house after school maybe 2 or 3 times a week. In Grandma's Volvo, there were lemon sherbets. In Grandpa's Volvo, there were lolly snakes. At home, me and Gabby would raid the chocolate barrel and the jar of roasted almonds, tell them in detail about our day and what was coming up next. Maybe go for a swim in the pool or do painting or French classes with Grandpa. Grandpa had really cool radiator sunglasses, a really smart leather watch, always perfectly manicured nails, and hair which, if I was lucky, I would get to mess up and fix as my first training as a hairdresser. We would delight in hearing stories from their lives, or the lives of Gorbachev, or Emperor Augustus, or whoever Grandpa was reading about at the time. On special occasions, we also enjoyed Grandpa's special apple strudel, and more regularly his stewed apples. I would routinely hide Grandma's bag or Mum's bag when she came to pick us up, so we didn't have to leave. Grandpa would patiently negotiate with me to go and get it. Always big hugs, big laughs, long stories, and endless love. As we got older, we would continue to spend time with Grandma and Grandpa on holidays, after school, on the phone, via email, and via Skype. They would be our biggest fans at school debates, soirees, and presentation evenings at King David. When they went on holidays, they sent us postcards with little watercolours, telling of adventures from all over the world. In 2015, however, I was forced to come to terms with the rapid development of technology, as Grandpa, instead of mailing me a postcard, as was tradition, opted instead to send a photo of it by email from his iPad. Today, it sits in my room next to all the others, and nearby his wonderful botanic cards from over so many years. It was my joy to share stories of school and uni and schnapps with my Grandpa. He was so invested, curious, humorous. He taught me the art of listening and gentleness and quiet grace. We shared a love of ancient history, maps of Europe, beautiful flowers, and learning languages. I taught him Arabic, he taught me French and a little Russian, and the language for a well-lived life, and also at one point Japanese. In 2019, while in the UK on my gap year, Dad called with an idea for me and Grandpa to create a diary for 2020 filled with his botanical watercolours. My dad is the best at commissioning Grandpa's art and has done so for years. It's something Grandpa told me about a year ago that always filled him with joy. On the call, I was so overwhelmed with the beauty of this idea. I got home in August, and for 3 months, me and Grandpa worked hard, had style guide meetings, went on excursions to South Melbourne to decide on which paper to use. Despite the diary we created being doomed for year 1 of the pandemic, it brought so much joy and indeed continues to do so. With so much pride, I share his paintings and his stories with my friends, my cousins, with Gabby, Grandma, Mum, and Dad. And I have the diary here today. So if anyone wants to look at it after, in this very cool bag that perfectly fits the diary, then you can. Whoa. Here it is. Diary. Okay. Last paragraph. The last year, that wasn't the right vibe. Okay. The last year has been really hard. Grandma and Grandpa never seemed old to me. Their vitality, enthusiasm, and good health has been such a blessing. And yet for my whole life, I worried. How beautiful it has been in the last few months to spend time with my grandpa, holding his warm, perfectly manicured, so well-trained hand, to share stories of my rapidly changing life, to see his face light up and listen and hear him speak in the languages of his family and his homelands and his ancestors. I love my grandpa so much, I always will, and how lucky are we all to have been guided by his marvelous, or as he would say, marvelous, gentle warmth. I'd just like to finish with a reading that is very special to me and my Netzer community. It's called Hanach. It's a poem based on the reading, which I will read in a minute, which I grew up learning in Netzer. It has always signposted moments for me in the company of people I love who are leaving, people whose journey is in some way departing from mine. It is my favorite piece in Hebrew, and today I would like to read it for you. So this is from chapter 4 of Tosefta Sukkah, composed during Talmudic Israel. I'll look that up later. Which is around 190 to 230 CE. I'm just going to read it in English, and then I'll read the Netzerified version of it. Is that it? That is, yeah, okay. Saints and pious people were dancing before them with torches and saying words of praise. What were they saying? Happy are they who have not sinned, and whoever has sinned shall be forgiven. Some of them were saying, happy am I whose youth has not shamed my old age. This was said by the pious. And others of them were saying, happy am I whose old age can atone for my youth. This was said by the penitents. Hillel the elder used to say, to the place which my heart loves, there my feet lead me. If you come to my house, I will go to there. If you do not come to my house, then I will not go to there. For it is said, in every place where I record my name, I will come unto you and I will bless you. And the words in Hebrew are, Hanach leraglai lalechet, lemakom shelibi ohev, putach libi le'ehov et hamakom, le'ehov et hamakom, hamakom elav raglai holchot. Let me walk to the place where my heart lies. Open my heart to love the place where my feet take me to. Thank you. Wishing you a long life.
Thank you, Noah, Sandra. We rise now and continue on page 68. El malirachamim, shoechein bam roimim, hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina, im kedoshim utehorim kezohar arakia mazirim, et nishmat Yosef ben Abraham shavlach leolamot, Began Eden tehei menuchato, Baal harakamim, יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו. ונאמר אמן. We turn now to Kaddish and to a short reading prior. On page 79, the light of life is a finite flame. Like the Shabbat candles, life is kindled. It burns, it glows. It is radiant with warmth and beauty. But soon it fades or is extinguished. Its substance is consumed, and it is no more. In light we see, in light we are seen. The flames dance and our lives are full, but as night follows day, the candle of our life burns down and gutters. There is an end to the flame. We see no more and are no more seen. Yet we must not despair, for we are more than a memory slowly fading into the darkness. With our lives, we give life. Something of us can never die. We move in the eternal cycle of darkness and death, of light and life. There are two groups here this evening. The first are called Avelim, mourners, and we extend to the family our consolation. The rest of us are here to extend condolences, our support today and in the difficult times ahead. We invite now our Avelim, our mourners, to recite Kaddish and ask those here to extend condolences to please respond as is customary in the words Yehei Shemei Rabbah in the middle of the page. We turn to page 84. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yithalev v'yithalal Shemei dekudesha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran b'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom birmomav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. Let us say, amen. Friends, that concludes our service here in this beautiful setting. I'd like to ask you, as you make your way out of the Beit Knesset, if you'd be kind enough to return your Sidurim where you got them from. And may I ask that the family be permitted to go out first so you can extend your greetings to them just outside.